In this video, we're going to animate the arm of the Battlebot using a skeleton and inverse kinematics. And that'll allow us to keyframe the arm by animating the tip. We're going to start off in the side view with our geometry. The first thing I want to do is make sure that the cone and that forearm element have been combined into one. I could do that by shift selecting both, holding down the space bar and choosing Mesh, Combine. I'll then click on Delete by Type History and I'll center the pivot. First thing we're going to do is introduce a skeleton. And the way skeletons work are that we control the rest of the skeleton by the very first bone we introduce. I'll hold down the space bar and I'm going to go to Skeleton, Create Joints. I'm going to click down here first because we'll need this main primary bone to parent it to the rest of the model so that the animation works as one. Now I'm going to click over the sphere at the shoulder, then one where the elbow would be, and then another one near the tip. If I hit W on the keyboard, I can see that I've got a chain of bones that are all connected. They're all controlled by this very first bone that we introduced. If I were to click on the second one, everything to the left of that one is controlled by it, and so on. So it's important that we establish the bones in this sequence, starting with the very first primary one that'll attach to our animation, and then from shoulder to elbow, and then tip. When I put my geometry back on, I can see that I've misplaced those joints. It's very easy to place them exactly where I want now. I'll click on the shoulder joint and I'll hold down D on the keyboard. And now I can move the pivot of the joint itself to where I want it to be. So the same keyboard function D that lets us move the pivot of our geometry also lets us relocate a specific joint in a sequence of bones. Now I've got them set the way I want in the front view, but I know I need to go to my orthographic top view to align the bones inside the geometry. I've only got one bone selected, but if I wanted to, I could hit the up arrow until all the bones are selected, and now I can move them as one collective entity. Back in my perspective view, I've got to attach my geometry to the bones now. And we're going to use a technique called parenting. I'll select the ball joint for the shoulder, shift select the bone, and hit P to parent. I'll now do this for the second piece of geometry as well. Selecting the geometry, shift selecting the bone, hitting P to parent. If for any reason it's not in the right place, you can select the geometry again, and if you were to hit Shift P, it will disconnect it. So if you had to, you could move the joint again for the bone. Now what that means is if we select that proprietary bone that we first put in, you can see that the geometry now follows it. And that means that once we introduce the Ik kinematics animation technique, the bones will follow the way the joints bend and articulate. Once again, I'm going to go to my side view. Back in the side view, I'm going to hold down the space bar, go to skeleton once again. About halfway down, you'll see the term Create Ik Handle. Now, because we want to articulate from the very tip, we establish the shoulder first by clicking on the ball joint for that. Now I'm going to click on the tip of the cone where that joint appears. You'll see kind of a brown wireframe tool being introduced. I'll grab my x-axis and now I can see that I can articulate that arm and the elbow, and the shoulders follow when I move the tip. For often enough, the elbow might be going in the wrong direction though. If I were to go to my perspective view, with that Ik selected, any one of these brown lines, you'll notice a circle in the back where the shoulder joint is, and then a white triangle. You want that white triangle to point up. That will determine which direction the elbow will bend at. If it's not bending the way you want, you can hit T on the keyboard. And the white triangle will have the vertices with which to move the position. I'm going to leave it vertical. In the next tutorial, we'll attach the articulating arm to the body of our Battlebot.